let's set the scene. We're in Mecca, about 6 years into the Prophet's mission. The Muslim community, it's tiny, it's isolated, and it is under some serious pressure. To survive, they really need a game changer, an ally, a miracle, something. And that's where our story kicks off with a single prayer that was about to change absolutely everything.
So, the Prophet Muhammad makes this incredible prayer. He asks God to bring one of his two most powerful, most determined enemies over to his side. Now, this one prayer sets the stage for a transformation that is so dramatic it's almost hard to believe. And it brings us to the big question for today. Which one of these men would it be? And how in the world was it going to happen?
Okay, let's really get into this. At this moment in time, there are maybe 40 Muslims in Mecca. That's it. Another 100 or so have fled for safety abroad. They are incredibly vulnerable. So to get any kind of traction, to just be able to practice their faith without being attacked, they desperately needed someone with some real power, some real strength to join them. And the Prophet knew exactly who could do it. The two men who were, ironically, leading the charge against him.
And these were two seriously formidable guys. On one side, you've got Abu Jahl. He's rich, he's smart, and he's one of the main architects of the persecution. On the other side, there's Umar bin Khattab, a man of just immense physical strength, feared by everyone for his brutal hostility. I mean, to give you an idea of his mindset, he once beat a female convert until he got tired and then told her, "I only stopped because I'm exhausted, not because he felt any pity." Both of them were the fiercest enemies of Islam you could imagine. This prayer, it was a real long shot.
But you know, even before this prayer was answered, the old power structure in Mecca was already starting to show some cracks. Things were about to get shaken up, big time. And it was going to come from two directions. One from very far away, and another right in the heart of the city.
So the first shockwave came from Habasha, what we now call Ethiopia. Some Muslims had fled there to escape persecution, but a Meccan envoy showed up to try and drag them back. He thought he had a clever plan appealing to the Christian king's faith, but it backfired. When the Muslim leader explained their beliefs about Jesus, the king was genuinely moved by how similar they were. He literally drew a line in the sand and said, "Your faith and mine are no further apart than this line." He gave them his full protection. For Mecca, this was a massive diplomatic blow. It proved they weren't untouchable.
Right as the news of this victory starts trickling back, a tremor hits Mecca itself. The Prophet's own uncle, Hamza, a total legend, a fierce warrior, a guy who loved to hunt, is on his way back into the city. He has no idea he's about to walk straight into a confrontation that will change his life and their lives forever.
And what happens next is just, wow. Hamza gets back, and someone tells him that Abu Jahl had viciously insulted his nephew Muhammad. Fueled by this fierce family loyalty and just pure rage, Hamza finds Abu Jahl, smashes his bow right over his head, and in this one electrifying moment of defiance, declares his conversion. It wasn't some quiet spiritual moment, it was a challenge. Mecca was absolutely stunned. One of its toughest men had just switched sides.
So Hamza's conversion sent shockwaves through Mecca. But remember the Prophet's prayer? It was for one of two men. And while Hamza brought some much-needed muscle, that prayer was about to be answered in a way that was even more shocking and, frankly, world-altering.
So this really is the question, isn't it? How does someone go from being the ultimate enemy to the ultimate champion? Because Umar's transformation, it didn't start with the quest for truth. It started with him wanting to commit murder. Furious about the growing influence of Islam, and especially about Hamza's conversion, Umar bin Khattab strapped on his sword and marched out with one goal: to kill the Prophet Muhammad.
The chain of events here is just unbelievable. As Umar is on his way, sword in hand, a secret Muslim sees him and realizes what's about to happen. In a moment of pure genius, he diverts him. He says, "Hey, why don't you go deal with your own family first?" and tells Umar that his own sister, Fatima, had become a Muslim. Well, Umar explodes with rage. He storms to her house, he hears the Quran being recited, bursts in and attacks his brother-in-law. When his sister jumps in to protect her husband, Umar hits her, so hard that she starts to bleed. And that moment, seeing his sister, bloody but utterly defiant, that's when everything changed.
You have to realize, this was the turning point. Seeing his own sister, with blood on her face, looking him straight in the eye and standing by her faith without a shred of fear, it just stopped him cold. The story goes that a wave of shame just washed over him. His own family was willing to die for this belief. And that courage, it completely shattered his hardened anger. He just sat down, totally shaken, and asked to see what it was they were reading. And this is what he read. Surah Taha. The very first lines aren't about judgment or punishment, they're about mercy. We did not reveal the Quran to you to make you suffer.
The words he had just heard through the door now hit him with their full, beautiful force. He was just overwhelmed. He exclaimed, "What beautiful, noble, majestic words!" The man who had set out to kill the prophet was now on his way to pledge his life to him. The prayer had been answered.
The impact was immediate, and it was seismic. With Hamza the lion, and now Umar, who would be called the one who distinguishes truth from falsehood, with both of them in their ranks, the very idea of what it meant to be a Muslim in Mecca was about to be totally redefined.
This right here tells the whole story. Before them, being Muslim was a secret. It was something whispered about in a safe house called Dar el-Arqam. You were an easy target for public humiliation and torture. But after they joined, Umar himself demanded, "Why are we still hiding?" That fear that had just choked their existence for years, it started to lift. It was replaced by this incredible newfound courage to just be who they were, out in the open.
And this image perfectly captures that change. For the very first time, 40 Muslims marched out of their hiding place. They walked in 2 rows, with Hamza leading one, Umar leading the other, and the Prophet right between them. This wasn't just a walk, it was a declaration to the entire city of Mecca that they were done hiding in the shadows. A whole new era of defiance had just begun.
But of course, this new strength, this public defiance, it provoked a backlash that was completely unprecedented and, frankly, terrifying. The leaders of Mecca saw their power being challenged, and they decided it was time to crush this movement once and for all. Not with random acts of violence, but with a total, systematic siege.
For 3 full years, just let that sink in. Not a month, not 6 months, 3 years. The Muslims and their entire tribe, the Banu Hashim who were protecting the Prophet out of family loyalty, were all forced into a narrow valley and completely cut off. The goal was brutally simple: starve them into giving up the Prophet. And the terms of this pact were absolute and cruel. They wrote it down and hung it inside the Kaaba itself to make it official. No marrying them, no selling to them, no buying from them, no talking to them, nothing. You get this incredibly stark picture of the Prophet's wife, Khadija, spending every last bit of her wealth to smuggle in food, while the Prophet's own uncle, Abu Lahab, spent his fortune bribing merchants to jack up the prices so his own starving relatives couldn't afford a thing.
This quote from one of the companions, it just brings the sheer desperation to life. People were literally eating tree leaves to survive. The sounds of hungry crying children were constant. They were boiling and eating scraps of leather, old animal hides, just to put something in their stomachs. This wasn't just a tough time. It was a calculated attempt to starve a community into submission that lasted for over 1,000 days.
So, how did it end? Well, it was a combination of human conscience. Some of the Meccans finally felt ashamed of their cruelty and what the Muslims saw as a sign from God. The Prophet announced that an insect had miraculously eaten the entire parchment document in the Kaaba, leaving only the name of God untouched. When the leaders went to check, they saw he was right. The boycott was over. But that moment of relief was tragically short-lived.
The end of that physical siege almost immediately gave way to an even deeper, more personal kind of suffering. The immense strain of those 3 years had taken a fatal toll, and the Prophet was about to lose the 2 people who were the bedrock of his support system.
In the very same year, he lost his uncle Abu Talib. He was the man whose tribal status was the only thing standing between the Prophet and the leaders of Mecca. And then, just days later, he lost his beloved wife of 25 years, Khadija, his first believer, his best friend, his emotional rock, his financial backer. You see, one was his shield out in the world, and the other was his refuge at home. And in the span of a few days, they were both gone.
And that's really the crucial point here, the underlying message behind these devastating losses. By taking away every earthly support one by one, first the wealth during the boycott, then his protector, then his partner, the message became crystal clear. The success of this mission wasn't going to depend on any one person, no matter how powerful or how loved they were. It was tied only to God.
So this is where we're left. That prophetic prayer was answered, and it brought 2 of Mecca's greatest warriors to the side of Islam, forever changing history. But that incredible victory was followed by years of unimaginable suffering, and then just devastating personal loss. Now with his human support system completely gone and the danger in Mecca worse than ever, the path forward was anything but clear. Which leads us to the final question: where on earth could he turn next?